Terry Sherman stood in the moonlight, his breath visible in the cool night air. The ranch was eerily quiet, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. He had ventured out to check on the remaining cows, his faithful dogs accompanying him. The past months had been a nightmare. 7 of their cows had either died or vanished without a trace. The ones they found were gruesomely mutilated. One cow had a perfect hole in the center of its left eyeball, while another had its rectum surgically removed. A strange chemical odor clung to the air around the carcasses, unlike anything Terry had ever encountered. As he walked, Terry couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The ranch, which once felt like home, now seemed malevolent. His dogs, usually fearless, were on edge, their ears perked and heads darting at every sound. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by voices. They were low, guttural, speaking in an incomprehensible language. Terry's heart raced as he strained to understand the words, but they seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He estimated the voices were just 7 to 8 meters away, but the moonlight revealed nothing but shadows. His dogs went berserk, barking furiously and tugging at their leash. They refused to advance further, instead pulling Terry back towards the house. He followed them, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. As he retreated, he could still hear the disembodied voices, now seeming to mock him. Back in the house, Gwen waited anxiously. She had heard the stories of Skinwalker Ranch, tales of a werewolf-like creature that stalked the land. When Terry stumbled through the door, his face pale and his eyes wide with fear, she knew something terrible had happened. That night, neither of them could sleep. The strange voices, the chemical smells, the mutilated cattle, all of it pointed to something far more sinister than a mere wild animal. Terry and Gwen decided it was time to leave, to sell the ranch and escape whatever cursed presence lingered there. After they moved, the incidents at Skinwalker Ranch only grew in intensity. New owners reported similar horrors: cows disappearing, strange smells, and those haunting, otherworldly voices. The legend of the werewolf spread, but the truth remained elusive. One cold, moonlit night, a lone figure stood at the edge of the ranch, watching the house. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and a low growl rumbled from its throat. It had been waiting, biding its time. The new owners had no idea what terror awaited them. The ranch held its breath, ready to reveal its darkest secrets to those brave or foolish enough to seek them. Months after the Shermans left, the ranch was bought by a young couple, Mark and Lisa Thompson. Eager for a fresh start, they moved in with their 2 children, oblivious to the property's dark history. They were enchanted by the wide-open spaces and the tranquility of the remote landscape. For the first few weeks, life was peaceful. The Thompsons settled in, attending to the daily chores of ranch life. The children, Emily and Jake, spent their afternoons exploring the fields and playing near the old barn. Lisa often remarked how quiet and serene the nights were, a welcome change from the noise of their previous city life. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mark noticed something peculiar. One of their cows was missing. Dismissing it as the animal wandering off, he decided to search for it the next day. But by morning, another cow had vanished. A sense of unease began to settle in. That night, Mark and Lisa were awakened by a strange noise outside their bedroom window. It was a low, guttural growl, unlike any animal they had ever heard. Mark grabbed a flashlight and cautiously stepped outside, the beam cutting through the inky darkness. He was met with silence. The air was still, but a strange, acrid smell lingered. His dogs, normally eager to follow, stayed back, their tails tucked between their legs. Mark's unease deepened as he swept the flashlight around the yard. The beam fell on a set of footprints, large and clawed, leading towards the woods. The following day, they found the missing cows. One was lying lifeless in the field, a perfectly round hole in its skull. The other was mutilated in the same grotesque manner the Shermans had described. The strange chemical smell was overwhelming. Lisa, now frantic with fear, suggested they leave immediately. But Mark was determined to uncover the truth. He installed cameras around the property, hoping to capture whatever was stalking their livestock. For several nights, they watched the footage, but saw nothing unusual. Then, one night, the voices started. Mark and Lisa awoke to the same incomprehensible language Terry Sherman had described. It seemed to come from right outside their bedroom window. Mark, armed with a rifle, ventured outside once more. The dogs barked furiously but refused to leave the house. As he stood in the yard, flashlight in one hand and rifle in the other, Mark saw a figure lurking at the edge of the woods. It was tall, with glowing eyes and a muscular, hunched form. It let out a bone-chilling howl that echoed across the ranch. Mark fired a shot, but the creature vanished into the darkness. The family was shaken but resolved to stay, determined not to be driven away by fear. The next morning, they found a message scrawled in the dirt near their front porch. It was in a language they couldn't understand, but the intent was clear. They were not welcome. Days turned into weeks, and the encounters grew more frequent and more terrifying. The cameras captured fleeting glimpses of the creature, a hulking, werewolf-like being with eyes that glowed in the night. The voices became a nightly occurrence, and the chemical smell seemed to seep into the very walls of their home. One night, as the family huddled together in the living room, a chilling realization dawned on them. The creature was not just an animal, it was something far more sinister, something intelligent and malevolent. It was toying with them, testing their resolve. Mark and Lisa knew they had to find a way to stop it, but they were running out of time. The creature was growing bolder, and the attacks more frequent. As they devised a plan, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the creature was always one step ahead. In the dead of night, as they gathered their courage, a blood-curdling howl pierced the silence. The time had come for the final confrontation. The ranch, once a place of hope and new beginnings, had become a battleground for their very survival. What the Thompsons didn't know was that the secrets of Skinwalker Ranch ran deeper than they could ever imagine, and the true horror was yet to be revealed. The Thompsons huddled in the living room, tension thick in the air. Mark loaded his rifle with trembling hands, while Lisa clutched the children close. The howl that had shattered the night still echoed in their ears, a grim reminder of the terror lurking outside. "Mark, we can't keep living like this," Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. "We need to get help. We need to leave." Mark nodded, but his eyes were steely with determination. "I know, Lisa, but if we leave now, we might never know what's really going on here. This thing, whatever it is, has been haunting this place for too long. We need to put an end to it." Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the house into darkness. The children whimpered, and Lisa tightened her grip on them. Mark grabbed a flashlight and cautiously made his way to the window, peering into the pitch-black night. "Stay here," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm going to check the generator." As he stepped outside, the cold night air bit at his skin. He could hear the dogs barking furiously from inside the house, their frantic barks muffled by the walls. Mark moved slowly, the beam of his flashlight sweeping across the yard. The chemical smell was stronger than ever, burning his nostrils. He reached the generator and found it untouched. Confused, he turned back towards the house, only to see a pair of glowing eyes watching him from the edge of the woods. Mark froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The creature stepped forward, its hulking form illuminated by the moonlight. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, half man, half beast, with long, sharp claws and matted fur. Its eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light, and its mouth curled into a sinister grin. Mark raised his rifle, but the creature was faster. It lunged at him, knocking him to the ground. The flashlight flew from his hand, casting erratic beams of light across the yard. Mark struggled, trying to push the creature off, but its strength was overwhelming. Just as Mark felt himself losing consciousness, the creature suddenly released him and retreated into the woods, its glowing eyes disappearing into the darkness. Mark lay on the ground, gasping for breath, his mind racing with fear and confusion. Inside the house, Lisa and the children waited anxiously, their ears straining for any sound. Moments later, Mark stumbled back in, bruised and shaken. He locked the door behind him and leaned against it, his chest heaving. "It's real," he gasped. "It's real, and it's hunting us." Lisa's eyes widened with terror. "We need to leave, Mark, now, before it comes back." Mark nodded, his resolve faltering. "You're right. We can't stay here any longer. We need to find help, figure out what this thing is." The family quickly packed a few essentials, moving quietly and swiftly. They piled into their truck, Mark in the driver's seat, his hands still shaking. As they sped down the long, winding road away from the ranch, the sense of dread began to lift. But as they approached the main highway, the truck sputtered and died. Mark cursed under his breath, trying to restart the engine, but it was no use. The vehicle was completely dead. They were stranded, miles from the nearest town, with no cell service and the creature still out there, somewhere in the dark. Just as panic began to set in, they heard it again, the guttural voices, speaking in that incomprehensible language. This time, they were closer, surrounding the truck. The dogs, locked in the back, began to howl. Mark grabbed his rifle, stepping out of the truck with Lisa and the children close behind. The moonlight cast eerie shadows on the road, and the voices grew louder, more insistent. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was an old man, his face weathered and lined, with eyes that held a lifetime of secrets. He raised a hand, signaling for them to stay calm. "You must leave this place," he said, his voice gravelly and urgent. "The creature will not stop until it has what it wants." Mark stepped forward, his rifle aimed at the stranger. "What does it want? And who are you?" The old man sighed, a deep sadness in his eyes. "It wants blood. It feeds on fear and suffering, and I am the keeper of its curse, bound to this land by forces you cannot comprehend." Lisa clutched the children, her eyes wide with terror. "How do we stop it?" she pleaded. The old man shook his head. "There is only one way to break the curse. You must find the heart of the creature and destroy it. But beware, it will not be an easy task. The creature is cunning and will do everything in its power to stop you." As the family listened in stunned silence, the voices grew louder, more insistent. The old man turned, his gaze fixed on the woods. "There is no time to waste. Follow me. I will show you the way." With no other options, the Thompsons followed the old man into the darkness, their hearts heavy with fear and uncertainty. The path ahead was fraught with danger, and the true horror of Skinwalker Ranch was only beginning to reveal itself. And so, they ventured into the unknown, each step bringing them closer to a confrontation with the monstrous force that haunted their lives. The night was far from over, and the battle for their survival had only just begun. The old man led the Thompsons deeper into the woods, his steps sure and purposeful despite the darkness. The trees closed in around them, their gnarled branches casting twisted shadows. Mark held his rifle tightly, every nerve on edge, while Lisa clung to the children, her heart pounding with fear. "Who are you?" Mark asked again, his voice low. "How do you know about this creature?" The old man glanced back, his eyes reflecting the moonlight. "I am Samuel Blackwood. My family has been bound to this land for generations, cursed to protect the secret of the Skinwalker. Many years ago, my ancestors made a pact with dark forces, and this creature was born from that sin." As they walked, Samuel explained the grim history. The creature, a werewolf, was once a man who had sought forbidden power. The pact had twisted him into a monster, and he became the guardian of the ranch, feeding on the fear and pain of those who lived there. The curse could only be broken by destroying its heart, hidden deep within its lair. After what felt like hours, they reached a clearing. In the center stood a massive, ancient tree, its roots twisted and blackened as if scorched by fire. Samuel stopped and pointed to a small cave opening beneath the roots. "The heart lies within," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "But be warned, the creature will protect it with all its might. You must be swift and resolute." Mark nodded, determination hardening his features. He turned to Lisa, his eyes fierce. "Stay here with the kids. I'll go in with Samuel." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "Be careful," she whispered, hugging him tightly. "Please, come back to us." Mark and Samuel entered the cave, the air growing colder with each step. The walls were lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the darkness. As they ventured deeper, the chemical smell became overpowering, and the guttural voices echoed around them. They reached a chamber at the heart of the cave. In the center, pulsating with a sickly green light, was the heart of the creature. It was encased in a crystalline structure, dark veins throbbing around it. The werewolf stood guard, its eyes blazing with fury. With a roar, the creature lunged at them. Mark fired his rifle, the bullets barely slowing the beast. Samuel chanted ancient words, his voice rising above the chaos. The creature faltered, momentarily weakened by the spell. "Now, Mark," Samuel shouted. "Destroy the heart." Mark rushed forward, raising the rifles but to smash the crystal. Just as he was about to strike, the werewolf tackled him, sending the rifle clattering across the chamber. They grappled, the beast's claws tearing into Mark's flesh. Desperate, Mark reached for a fallen shard of crystal and plunged it into the creature's side. The werewolf howled in agony, its grip loosening. Mark seized the opportunity, crawling towards the heart. With every ounce of strength, he brought the shard down on the crystalline structure, shattering it. A blinding light filled the chamber, and the werewolf let out a final, ear-piercing scream. The heart disintegrated into dust, and the creature collapsed, its body dissolving into a pool of darkness. Mark lay on the cold stone floor, gasping for breath. Samuel helped him to his feet, a look of profound relief on his face. "It's over," he said softly. "The curse is broken." They emerged from the cave, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. Lisa ran to Mark, tears of joy streaming down her face. "You did it," she cried, hugging him tightly. "You saved us." Samuel stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as the sunlight touched the ancient tree. "The land will heal now," he said, a hint of hope in his voice. "But remember, the darkness can always return if one is not vigilant." The Thompsons left Skinwalker Ranch that day, never to return. The old man stayed behind, a silent guardian of the land's fragile peace. The terror that had haunted the ranch was gone, but the memory of the werewolf and the curse that created it would linger, a dark chapter in the ranch's history. As they drove away, Lisa glanced back at the fading silhouette of the ranch. "What if it comes back?" she asked quietly. Mark squeezed her hand, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "We'll be ready," he said, "and we'll never let fear control us again." But deep in the woods, where shadows danced and ancient secrets lay buried, the wind whispered a chilling promise. The story of Skinwalker Ranch was far from over.